The vanishing. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic conglomerate hummed with tension. High Chancellor Vrek, a towering insectoid with iridescent compound eyes, gazed out at the assembled representatives of 17 spacefaring civilizations. His mandibles clicked with apprehension as the holographic display before them showed a rippling anomaly in what had once been human space. 342 years ago, humanity vanished. Vrek began, his translator converting his clicks and hisses into standard galactic common. 9 billion sentients, gone in a single rotation. No warning, no explanation. The greatest mystery of our age. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The disappearance of humanity had reshaped galactic politics for centuries. The ambitious bipeds had been on the cusp of significant expansion when they simply ceased to exist. Their colonies went dark. Their communication networks fell silent. Search parties found empty cities, abandoned ships, and cooling cups of coffee, as if the entire species had been plucked from reality in mid-sentence. The power vacuum they left has long since been filled, continued Vrek. The Zril Imperium claimed Mars and the asteroid belt. The Faline Collective expanded into Alpha Centauri. The Torquay Mining Guild took over humanity's lunar operations. We divided their assets according to the Tree of Soul, and life continued. Ambassador Trell of the Feline rose, her gelatinous form shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. You speak as if this is history, Chancellor. Why raise this matter now? Vrek's upper limbs made a sweeping gesture toward the display. Because, distinguished representatives, after 3 centuries of silence, humanity is returning. The chamber erupted. On the display, the anomaly expanded, a swirling vortex of energy, unlike anything in known physics. Within its depths, shapes were moving, thousands of them. The first anomaly appeared in orbit around Earth 7 rotations ago, explained Science Director Kin, a diminutive quadruped with metallic fur. Since then, 317 similar distortions have manifested throughout former human territories. We've detected energy signatures, communications in human languages, and visual confirmation of vessels of human design, but far more advanced than anything in our historical records. Are they hostile? Demanded General Rax of the Zril, his armored exoskeleton clanking as he rose. Uncertain, replied Kin. They have disabled several Zril patrols that attempted to block their access to Mars, but caused no casualties. They appear to be reclaiming their former territories with remarkable efficiency. The display shifted to footage from a conglomerate science vessel. A sleek craft of unmistakably human design hovered near an abandoned outpost on Titan. The ship seemed to shimmer, as if not entirely solid, occasional ripples of blue energy dancing across its hull. Around it, dormant systems were powering up, structures rebuilding themselves with impossible speed. Most disturbing, continued Kin, is their method of travel. They aren't using conventional drives, or even the quantum tunnels we developed. They simply appear as if stepping through a door between points in space. Ambassador Loni of the Ardani, a species known for their diplomatic acumen, spoke next. Have they communicated their intentions? Yes, Vrek replied, gesturing to his aide. The same message has been broadcasting across all frequencies. The chamber speakers activated, and a calm human voice filled the space. This is Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Alliance. After 342 years trapped beyond conventional spacetime, humanity has returned. We seek the peaceful repatriation of our former territories. We come not as conquerors, but as rightful returnees. Our representatives await diplomatic contact. Resistance would be regrettable. Regrettable, General Rax snarled. Is that a threat? The Zril have spent centuries developing Mars. We've built cities, established ecosystems, invested trillions in infrastructure. And now these ghosts expect us to simply hand it all back. Not ghosts, corrected Kin. Our scans confirm they are biological humans, but altered. Their genetic structure shows significant modifications. Their technology operates on principles we cannot comprehend. They are humanity, evolved. Chancellor Vrek silenced the growing clamor with a sharp gesture. We must establish direct contact. I propose a diplomatic mission to their primary vessel orbiting Earth. We need to understand where they've been, what they've become, and what they truly want. 3 days later, the conglomerate diplomatic vessel Harmonic Discourse approached the coordinates provided by the humans. Earth loomed in the viewport, still mostly uninhabited after centuries of controlled ecological restoration following humanity's industrial era. Ambassador Loney led the delegation, accompanied by representatives from the species with the most significant stakes in former human territories. As they approached, space itself seemed to fold, and a massive vessel materialized before them. Unlike the utilitarian designs of old human ships, this craft resembled an enormous silver leaf, edges rippling with that same blue energy they had observed before. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. The main screen activated, revealing a human woman with dark skin and silver-white hair. Her eyes were the most striking feature, entirely black except for pinpricks of light that resembled stars. "Ambassador Loney," she said with a slight smile. "I am Admiral Helena Chen. Welcome to the threshold. We've been waiting a very long time for this meeting." "Admiral," Loney replied, managing to keep her voice steady. "How did you know my name? We haven't transmitted our delegation roster." Chen's smile widened fractionally. "Just one of many things we should discuss. Please, come aboard. We have much to share about where we've been and what we've become." The delegation was escorted through corridors that seemed to shift subtly as they walked, as if the ship's interior geometry wasn't entirely fixed in conventional space. The humans they passed moved with unnatural grace, and all possessed those same star-filled eyes. Many were engaged in activities the delegates couldn't comprehend, manipulating fields of light with mere gestures, or standing motionless in alcoves filled with swirling energy. Finally, they reached a circular chamber where Admiral Chen waited with several other humans. The walls displayed a real-time view of space around them, but with additional layers of information: energy flows, dimensional ripples, and other phenomena invisible to normal perception. "Please be seated." Chen gestured to chairs that formed from the floor itself. "I imagine you have questions." 342 years' worth, replied Loney. "Where have you been? What happened to humanity?" Chen's expression grew solemn. "We call it the shift. We still don't know if it was natural or engineered, but in an instant, every human in normal space was pulled into a parallel dimension, what we came to call the fold, a place where physics operates differently." Another human, an older man introduced as Science Director Marcus Wei, continued. "At first, we thought it was the end. Billions of humans suddenly finding themselves in an alien realm where conventional matter couldn't exist in its normal state. But we adapted. We had to. The fold exists adjacent to normal spacetime," Chen explained. "We could see our worlds, our homes, but couldn't interact with them. Like pressing your hand against an impenetrable glass window. We watched as you divided our territories, claimed our resources. You must understand," interjected this real representative, "we believed you were gone forever. According to interstellar law, we're not here to assign blame." Chen interrupted gently. "What's done is done. But now we found our way back, and we seek the return of what was ours." "That's impossible," the Zrill exclaimed. "Centuries of development, trillions in investments. We're prepared to offer compensation," Wei said. "Knowledge, technology, assistance with relocation. The fold changed us, Ambassador. We've had centuries to evolve, to learn, to develop technologies beyond what you might imagine possible." "Is that a threat?" demanded the Zrill. Chen's star-filled eyes seemed to darken. "It's a statement of fact. We could have simply taken everything back by force. Instead, we came seeking dialogue. That should tell you something about our intentions." As the negotiations grew heated, A junior aide burst into the chamber. "Admiral, we're detecting weapons activation from multiple drill vessels in the Mars sector." Chen sighed, looking genuinely disappointed. "It seems some wish to test our resolve." She turned to the Zrill representative. "I strongly advise you to order your forces to stand down. We have no desire for conflict." The Zrill's mandibles clacked in defiance. "Mars is Zrill territory now. We will defend what is ours." Admiral Chen closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, the stars within seemed to pulse. "Very well. Perhaps a demonstration is necessary after all." The revelation. The diplomatic chamber aboard the threshold fell silent as Admiral Chen placed her palm on the table's surface. The material rippled like water, and a three-dimensional display materialized, showing the Mars sector. A dozen Zrill warships had formed a blockade around the red planet, weapons charged and aimed at the smaller human vessels that had appeared in orbit. "You're outnumbered and outgunned," the Zrill representative said, mandibles twitching in what his species considered a smile. "Those are our most advanced dreadnoughts." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "Impressive vessels. However, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about what humanity has become." She looked at Science Director Wei. "Perhaps it's time for a more comprehensive explanation of our transformation." Wei stepped forward, his movements fluid and precise. "When the shift occurred, humanity was thrown into a realm where the barriers between mind and matter, energy and information were permeable. We call it the fold, a dimension that intersects with normal space but operates under different physical laws." He gestured, and the display shifted to show swirling, fractal patterns of energy that hurt the eyes to look at directly. At first, survival was our only concern. Billions died in the initial transition before we learned to stabilize our physical forms. But those who survived began to change, to evolve in response to our new environment. "The fold enhanced our cognitive abilities first," continued Admiral Chen. "Our minds expanded, our consciousness altered. We discovered we could perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously, manipulate energy directly with thought. Later came the physical changes, cellular regeneration, enhanced neural pathways, the integration of our biological systems with the energy patterns of the fold." "You're saying you've become what? Energy beings?" asked Ambassador Loney, her translucent skin pulsing with skepticism. "Not exactly," Wei replied. "We remain biological at our core, but we've transcended many of the limitations that defined humanity before. We exist in a state between conventional matter and energy, able to shift between states as needed." The display changed again, showing the interior of what appeared to be a vast spherical structure. Within it, millions of humans moved about their daily lives in a civilization unlike anything the aliens had seen. Buildings that reconfigured themselves at will. Transportation that seemed to involve individuals simply stepping through portals of light. Children playing games by manipulating small objects with their minds. "The shift was nearly our extinction," Chen said quietly. "Instead, it became our evolution. For over 3 centuries, we built a new civilization within the fold, developing technologies and sciences based on principles your physics hasn't yet discovered." The Zrill representative made a dismissive gesture. "An impressive story. But..." An alert sounded, and the display shifted back to Mars. The Zrill warships had opened fire on the human vessels. Energy weapons and kinetic projectiles streaked across space and passed harmlessly through the human ships as if they were holograms. "As I was saying," Chen continued calmly, "a fundamental misunderstanding." The delegates watched in astonishment as the human vessels seemed to flicker, becoming temporarily translucent before solidifying again. No countermeasures, no defensive shields. The attack simply passed through them, as if they weren't fully present in normal space. 3 weeks ago, subjective time, we finally perfected the technology to return," Wei explained. "We call it phase shifting, allowing us to transition between the fold and normal space at will. Our ships, our technology, Even our bodies can partially exist in both states simultaneously. On the display, one of the human vessels approached the largest Jril dreadnought. A pulse of blue energy emanated from the human ship, washing over the alien vessel. Instantly, all systems on the dreadnought went dark. "We've temporarily disrupted their energy systems," Chen explained. "No structural damage, no casualties. They'll regain power in approximately 1 hour." One by one, the human ships repeated the process, neutralizing the entire Zril fleet without firing a single conventional weapon. The delegates watched in stunned silence as the demonstration concluded. "Now," Chen said, turning back to the gathering, "shall we continue our discussion about peaceful repatriation?" The negotiations lasted for days. As details of the Mars incident spread throughout the conglomerate, the political landscape shifted dramatically. Some species advocated immediate compliance with all human demands, while others called for unified resistance. During a recess in the talks, Ambassador Loney sought out Admiral Chen in a quiet observation deck. The human stood before a viewport, gazing at Earth below. "Admiral, may I speak frankly?" Loney asked. Chen nodded without turning. "Always. Your capabilities terrify many in the conglomerate. The Jril are particularly concerned that once you've reclaimed your former territories, your ambitions won't stop there. What assurance can we have that humanity won't simply continue expanding, taking whatever you wish?" Now Chen turned, her star-filled eyes reflecting the blue-green planet below. "A valid concern, Ambassador. The truth is, we don't need your planets anymore, not in the conventional sense. The Fold taught us to create habitable spaces within dimensional pockets, to synthesize any resource we require. We could house our entire population in a volume smaller than your flagship. Then why return at all?" Loney asked. "Why not simply remain in your fold?" Chen's expression softened. "Because Earth is our home. Because despite everything we've become, we're still human at our core. We still feel the pull of our birthplace, still dream of blue skies and open waters. The Fold may have transformed us, but it didn't erase what makes us human. Our connection to our history, our world." She gestured toward Earth. "Besides, we've learned much that could benefit all species. The Fold contains knowledge and resources that could transform life throughout the galaxy. We don't seek conquest, Ambassador. We seek partnership, but as equals, not as supplicants." The final day of negotiations brought a significant development. Chancellor Vrek himself arrived aboard the threshold, accompanied by representatives from all 17 conglomerate species. "We have reached a consensus," Vrek announced. "The Galactic conglomerate formally recognizes humanity's claim to their historical territories. We propose a phased transition over 20 standard years, with fair compensation for established developments and mutual technology exchange programs." Chen nodded. "That seems reasonable. We have time." However, Vrek continued, mandibles clicking nervously, "We request assurances regarding your long-term intentions, your capabilities present." "Concerns. Understandable," Chen replied. "We propose an exchange of knowledge. Allow us to establish academies where we can share select aspects of Fold science with your brightest minds. In return, we'll accept oversight from a joint commission regarding our integration into galactic society." As the details were finalized, Science Director Wei approached Chancellor Vrek privately. "There's something else you should know," he said quietly. "Our return may have consequences beyond political realignment." Vrek's compound eyes fixed on the human. "Explain." "The shift wasn't random," Wei said. "We've discovered evidence suggesting it was triggered deliberately by a force outside both normal space and the Fold. We've encountered entities within the dimensional boundaries. Ancient, powerful beings that take interest in species that approach certain technological thresholds." "Are you suggesting a threat?" Vrek asked, his exoskeleton bristling. "Not immediately," Wei replied. "But our return has likely drawn attention. The galaxy may be facing challenges greater than territorial disputes in the coming decades. Humanity's evolution might not be unique in cosmic history. Vrek processed this information silently before responding. All the more reason for cooperation rather than conflict. We nodded. Precisely why we sought dialogue instead of conquest. The age of isolated species politics may be ending, Chancellor. What comes next will require us all to evolve, in our thinking, if not our biology. The new era. 5 years passed since humanity's return. The grand ceremony taking place in the newly reconstructed United Nations Plaza in Geneva marked the official completion of Earth's repatriation. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to witness what many had begun calling the dawn of the Third Age, the first being before humanity's disappearance, the second during their absence, and now a new era with their return. Admiral Helena Chen, now serving as Earth's first dimensional ambassador, stood on the stage beside Chancellor Vrek and leaders from 17 spacefaring civilizations. Behind them stood a monument, a simple obelisk of shifting material that seemed to exist partially in another dimension, commemorating the billions lost during the shift. Today marks not just the return of humanity to its birthplace. Chen addressed the gathering, but the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history. The repatriation treaty has succeeded beyond our expectations. Earth is home again to humans, while Mars continues its transition under joint administration. The crowd murmured approval. The Zrill, despite initial resistance, had agreed to a phased withdrawal from Mars in exchange for exclusive access to fold technology related to gravitational manipulation, an arrangement that had already revolutionized their mining operations across 3 systems. But we gather today for more than celebration. Chen continued, her tone growing serious. The time has come to share what we learned during our centuries within the fold, knowledge that concerns all sentient life. Science Director Wei stepped forward, activating a holographic display that expanded above the plaza. It showed what appeared to be a map of the galaxy, but with additional layers representing dimensional boundaries and energy flows invisible to conventional observation. This is a multi-dimensional scan of our galaxy, Wei explained. The bright points represent stars and planets in normal space. The blue network shows the fold, the dimension where humanity was trapped. But note these dark regions, dimensional voids that intersect with both normal space and the fold. The display zoomed in on one such region, a swirling darkness that seemed to consume light from surrounding areas. We call them breaches, Wei continued, rifts in the fabric of reality that appear to be expanding. Our research suggests they're not natural formations, but rather the result of a technological process, possibly weapons, used in a conflict that predates all our civilizations. Chancellor Vrek stepped forward. For the past 3 years, a joint research team has been investigating these phenomena. We can now confirm that similar dimensional disturbances have been detected in 12 sectors across the galaxy. A murmur of concern spread through the crowd. There's more, Chen said. During our time in the fold, we encountered remnants, fragments of consciousness from species long extinct, preserved within the dimensional boundaries. They spoke of a cycle, of civilizations that rise, discover dimensional technologies, and then face extinction when they draw the attention of those they called the Voidborn. The display shifted again, showing ancient ruins on distant worlds, some recognized by the assembled delegates, others previously unknown. All showed similar patterns of destruction, as if something had torn through dimensional barriers at those locations. We believe this shift that displaced humanity was triggered by our early experiments with quantum entanglement, Wei explained. But it wasn't targeted specifically at us. It was an automated defense mechanism, designed to remove potential threats before they developed further. Are you suggesting we face extinction? Asked the feline representative, her gelatinous form pulsing with distress patterns. No, Chen replied firmly. We're suggesting we face a choice. The entities within the breaches perceive dimensional manipulation as an intrusion into their domain. Our return from the fold has likely alerted them to our presence again. But this time, we understand what we're facing. Which brings us to the true purpose of today's gathering, announced Chancellor Vrek. The formation of the Dimensional Defense Initiative, a unified effort by all spacefaring species to monitor the breaches and develop technologies to seal them permanently. Over the next hours, the leaders outlined an unprecedented cooperative venture. The former human territories, now reintegrated into the galactic community, would serve as primary research hubs. Human phase-shifting technology would be adapted to create early warning systems. The Zhril would contribute their expertise in weapons development, while the Phalene's unparalleled computational systems would process the vast amounts of dimensional data. As the formal proceedings concluded, a small group gathered in a secure chamber beneath the plaza. Admiral Chen, Chancellor Vrek, and representatives from the core species studied a more detailed projection of the nearest breach. Activity has increased by 17% since we began phase-shifting operations in that sector, reported Wei. Our probes detect organized energy patterns consistent with conscious direction. How long do we have? Asked Vrek. Chen's star-filled eyes narrowed as she studied the data. Based on current expansion rates, 2 years before the first breach reaches critical mass, perhaps 5 before we face direct confrontation. Can we seal them? Asked Loni of the Ardani. Theoretically, Wei replied. We've developed prototype phase resonators that can stabilize dimensional boundaries. But deployment at this scale will require resources beyond what any single species can provide. General Rax of the Zhril, who had opposed humanity's return most vehemently years earlier, stepped forward. The Zhril Imperium commits its full military production capacity to this effort. We've witnessed what humanity achieved when facing extinction. Together, our potential is formidable. One by one, the representatives made similar pledges. Ancient rivalries and territorial disputes were set aside in the face of a threat that transcended traditional concerns. As the meeting concluded, Ambassador Loni approached Admiral Chen privately. There's something you haven't shared with the others, isn't there? Chen's expression remained neutral. What makes you say that? Your kind has developed abilities beyond technology, Loni observed. I've seen your people communicate without words, manipulate matter with thought alone. You've become something more than human. Chen was silent for a long moment before responding. The fold changed us in ways we're still discovering. Some humans have developed what you might call psychic abilities, connections to dimensional energies that transcend conventional physics. We're still learning to control these abilities, to understand their limits and potential. And you believe these abilities might be weaponized against the Voidborn. Not weaponized, Chen corrected. Harmonized. The entities in the breaches don't perceive reality as we do. They don't understand individual consciousness as we define it. We think we might be able to establish communication, perhaps even cooperation, through these dimensional connections. That sounds dangerously optimistic, Loni remarked. Chen smiled faintly. Humanity has always been optimistic to the point of foolishness. It's one of our most persistent traits, despite everything. But we're also pragmatic enough to prepare for the worst while hoping for better. 1 year later, the first confrontation occurred at a research outpost near the Sagittarius Arm. A breach expanded suddenly, engulfing the station before defensive measures could be deployed. When reinforcements arrived, they found the station intact but completely devoid of life. 17 researchers from 4 species simply gone. The pattern was familiar, the same mysterious disappearance that had claimed humanity centuries before. But this time, the galaxy was prepared. Phase shift beacons activated throughout the sector, creating a dimensional barrier that contained the breach's expansion. For the first time, the automated defense system that had swept up humanity encountered resistance. In a secret facility on Earth's moon, Admiral Chen stood within a chamber lined with phase resonators. Around her, 100 humans with the strongest dimensional abilities formed a mental network, their consciousnesses linked and amplified by the technology. Together, they reached out toward the breach. What they encountered defied easy description. Not a single entity, but a collective consciousness, ancient beyond comprehension. Perceiving the multiverse through dimensional rifts like windows, it did not think in terms of conquest or territory, but in patterns of energy and information. To this consciousness, dimensional manipulation by lesser beings represented contamination of its domain, disruption of patterns it had maintained for eons. For 3 days, Chen and her team remained in mental contact with the entity, attempting to convey understanding, to establish mutual recognition. When they finally emerged, exhausted but triumphant, they brought with them the framework for coexistence. They don't want our destruction, Chen explained to the assembled leaders. They want definition, boundaries. The Voidborn perceive dimensional manipulation as we might perceive pollution or invasion. They respond defensively, not aggressively. Can we negotiate with such beings? Chancellor Vrek asked. Not in conventional terms, Chen replied. But we've established parameters, frequencies of dimensional activity they will tolerate, methods of contact that don't disrupt their patterns. We believe we can continue our development of phase shift technology within these parameters without triggering further defensive measures. Over the following decades, a new equilibrium emerged. Humanity shared their fold-derived technologies selectively, while maintaining careful monitoring of dimensional boundaries. The Voidborn, now recognized as ancient custodians rather than conquerors, retreated into their domain once clear boundaries were established. Earth blossomed once more as the heart of human civilization, though many chose to remain within the fold colonies, preferring the expanded consciousness and abilities that dimension facilitated. Human phase shifting became the foundation for a new era of exploration, allowing vessels to traverse vast distances by stepping briefly into the fold and emerging elsewhere in normal space. The former territorial disputes that had dominated the initial return faded into historical footnotes. New colonies were established throughout the galaxy, not through conquest, but through cooperation, joint ventures that combined the unique biological advantages and technological specialties of multiple species. On the 100th anniversary of humanity's return, a new monument was unveiled in orbit around Earth, a massive phase-shifting structure that existed simultaneously in normal space and the fold, allowing visitors from both realms to interact. It bore a simple inscription in the languages of all participating species, divided by dimensions, united by purpose. Admiral Helena Chen, now physically ancient but dimensionally preserved by her connection to the fold, stood beside Chancellor Vrek's successor as they activated the monument. Its energy signature pulsed outward, visible across dimensions, a beacon of cooperative advancement. When we vanished, Chen remarked quietly, we thought it was our end. Instead, it was merely a detour, one that ultimately led to a greater destiny than we could have imagined. Do you ever regret the lost centuries? Asked the young chancellor. Chen's star-filled eyes gazed outward at the galaxy it had once feared humanity's return, and now embraced their contribution. How can I regret what led us here? Humanity didn't just come back from the brink of extinction. We returned with purpose, not to conquer, but to connect, not to dominate, but to discover. She smiled, watching as ships from a dozen worlds phase-shifted into orbit around the monument, their crews gathering to commemorate not just humanity's journey, but the new path all species now walk together. We disappeared as explorers, Chen said. We returned as guides. In the end, that makes all the difference.